Okay, now I get it. Okay. Ooh, Richard down here.
Good point. Cell phones off.
Yep. You said pacemaker to me? Is that what you said? don't you do that.
It's actually my calendar reminding me.
Okay, it's
I'm supposed to be here.
7 o'clock. I'm going to go ahead and call the meeting to order. I'd like the board members to give a brief one sentence or so introduction of themselves.
Oh.
Let's start with Jerry.
Okay, I'm Jerry Herman, and I'm sitting on the left side, stage right tonight, which is a whole new situation. I really appreciate the opportunity to be in a different position.
Okay. All right, I'm Brian Boyce. I'm the chair, and I'm active in a variety of organizations, including this one.
Bob Roth, Oregon City resident.
Doug DeHart, fishery biologist, live in the South End area of Oregon City.
I'm Pete Walter. I'm staff liaison.
Okay, and I think we'll just go ahead and dive into we seem to have a quorum at least, just barely. And do we have any citizen comments? Okay, just here to observe. Okay, Margie Hughes is here to observe. Okay. Okay, so any items not on the agenda that we...
I'd like to talk about the Lower River Task Force, give people an update at some point.
Yeah, our agenda, I've decided to follow the PRAC format for the agenda, which is pretty flexible, but we've got a spot for NRC member reports.
I like that.
And
Okay.
then
Yeah.
number 5 is staff reports at the end.
Yeah.
But yeah, if this works for everybody. Okay.
Okay, so we're going to general business, and we have our street tree list updates.
Okay. So the recommended street tree list draft that we've been working on for some time now was before you at the last meeting, and some of the suggestions that you had were to note which trees were Oregon natives. So we included a column for that. Also, we wanted to consolidate the list so that if a tree was appropriate for planting under a power line, we just created a column for that and said whether it was or wasn't. And then we wouldn't have a separate list for power line trees. So that made it shorter and less redundant. I've not altered any of the species suggestions since we last looked at this. I think at the previous meeting we discussed what we had removed to exclude in terms of trees that were potentially messy or fruit-bearing. I know that there is some concern that there's a lack of native species on this list, and one of the reasons for that is because most of the large native trees, with the exception of the dogwood that we did add, need a lot more space to grow than our planter strip widths would normally allow. Now, if an owner, an abutting property owner, wishes to designate a tree in their front yard as a street tree, that is a policy of the city, and it is an option for very narrow planter strips when it doesn't make sense to try to replant them. We will give the option of an abutting property owner recording a restrictive easement or restrictive covenant on a tree in their front yard, either an existing tree or a newly planted tree. And in that case, there's a little more flexibility as to species than there is on this list. So what I expect to do if the NRC recommends approval of the list tonight is to forward it for a final professional review from various departments, including Public Works and Parks, and then format it so that it's a little easier to read, We would include website links to the descriptions of all the species on the list, so that when somebody looks at it on the web, they can automatically go to Oregon State University horticulture description of the plant, and which would provide pictures and further information about the species. So this is a very short summary of the information that is on the OSU website and those kinds of things. And in some cases, there are some gaps which we would fill in from the OSU website as well. And then ultimately, we would take this up to the City Commission for final adoption. And I'm not sure at this point whether it will be adopted as a sort of a technical appendix, which can be readily amended by the NRC, which would kind of make sense, or something where we have to adopt it each time. But I think we will. It's not a huge issue to have the City Commission, adopt an updated list from time to time. Do you have any questions about it at this point? If I missed anything,
Well,
I can certainly.
One comment I could make is, we've got, for instance, just to pull one out, one sweet gum, there's one linden. There is quite a few of those that would be appropriate. And the linden, there's actually multiple species as well as multiple clones of some of those species. And it appears to be entirely non-invasive as well.
Tilia americana.
Let's see.
That's
Yeah,
the-
Tilia americana is one of the largest ones of the bunch. But there's a cordata, there's a silver-leafed one, which is a little rare in the trade, unfortunately. And but the little leaf is one of the most commonly planted, and we have one clone of little leaf on here.
Okay.
And even the seedlings would be appropriate for at least medium to large strips. And sweet gum is something, again, that's generally quite usable. Seedlings as well as clones like the one you have listed, but I would, open it up a little bit on those. They're an excellent tree for fall color. It's one of the better large trees for fall color. That's something the native trees lack, is red fall color in large trees. Just don't have any, unfortunately.
Okay.
And
Color.
I guess I would have a question, Ryan. Newport plum, Prunus raspifera compared to, what's the other one now? You had a plum for narrow strips and a plum for little wider strips, and I wonder whether they're really not very similar. That's my
what's the
question.
second?
Oh, you've got the
Valeriana
Bleriana plum.
Valerian,
Prunus
yeah.
valeriana.
That one is from the Portland City Street Tree List and
Okay.
Friends of Trees. It's a
Right.
hybrid. And I think the other one, the Cercifera, Newport,
Yes.
was originally on our list for a 3 to
Yeah.
4 planting strip. But, yeah.
The Valeriana, I believe, is not the least bit invasive, but the Cercifera species actually are. And the other problem is that the rootstock they graft them on is an invasive. So it's a complicated story. They're not as bad as invasive as some, but in the right situation, where it's a
Okay.
little more open, they do seed themselves about.
Well, I see what you're trying to do, and I really like the fact that you've got these arranged by planting strip width. We talked last month about some evergreens, I thought. Is that not true?
With what kind of evergreens?
Well, what were we talking, Alaska yellow cedar? We're talking
Yeah,
about using some evergreens because of year-round
yeah. For
water shedding capability.
I think any evergreens that we have are going to be in the larger
Okay. Oh, I see.
category.
That would make sense, yes.
We've got some Deodar, Atlas, and
yeah, Western Red.
All right, okay. Well, then you've got them in here. Okay, I didn't realize that.
yeah,
Red Fir.
those are listed from the Metro's Illustrated Guide for green streets in 8.5 and larger planter
All right.
strips.
The thing that Shaw was pointing out last month, I recall, was the need for year-round water shedding
Oh, sure.
capabilities.
Now, I want to be very clear that these are street tree lists, and
Yep.
that we also have a native plant list for anywhere,
Okay.
which is kind of organized according to habitat type. But with respect to the street trees, it becomes much more of an issue of
Sure.
potential abutting property owner issues
Right.
and maintenance. And so we need to be very careful about what we select.
Okay.
Yeah. Also, the issue on planting strip size is mostly that the larger species will be too big for smaller strips. We could rephrase this and make it a little more compact by saying for planting strips 2.5 to 3 feet and up on each of these. That way, you wouldn't have to keep repeating these trees through.
Good point.
Yeah. Then, because the smallest strips, everything listed there could go on any larger one. Because you could put a Cornelian cherry in any size strip. It's just, it's not going to be as big as some of the ones.
Yeah, I think that was deliberate to a certain extent,
Yeah.
so that people would not always choose the smallest tree for the planting strip.
Well, that's a point.
But at the same time, yeah, if someone wants to plant a Cornelian cherry, in a 4.5-foot strip, the city's probably not going to say no.
Yeah. Well, it would be just fine there,
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, and I noticed that smoke tree. That's going to be usually in the nursery trade. It's grown as a shrub. It's a large shrub. It tends to sucker a lot as a tree, but if you work at it from the time it's a small sprout, you can get it to become a tree.
Continuous.
Yeah, cotinus. And there's a wide variety of those as well.
What do you think? Should it be on the list, or is it going to
It's
be
really borderline.
Yeah.
It's going to tend to be a maintenance problem because of the suckering, because it's really a large shrub.
Yeah.
And
Maybe we...
I think the obavatus that this is a little more tree-like than the ones you see more commonly, which are Cotinus congregata,
Yeah, now, is that...
congregria, I think.
Where is the smoke tree? again?
It's right like the third plant on the whole list. Under-
gray smoke tree. Cotinus.
Yeah, gray
Okay,
smoke
yeah.
tree.
All right. Well,
Yeah,
going to err on the side of caution.
yeah.
Maybe we should have it.
I think it's an excellent plant.
Yeah.
I agree with what he's saying, but I think it's an excellent wildlife plant because of the cover that it provides. And,
Okay.
compared to some of these trees that, I know we're looking at street tree thinking, but when you get into the strip plantings, dead or a cedar and things like that, they have great wildlife habitat value and cotinus, whatever. But I think this thing is really a good list.
Would you keep it if we just add a note that it says it may resprout at base and needs maintenance?
Yeah, I think that's adequate, just so people know what they don't say, well, you had me put it in, and now it's a problem,
Okay.
At least have them be forewarned,
Yeah.
What you're really saying is more shrub form, which is true.
which is true.
Large shrub form.
Yeah, most tree plants of that produce will be presented as a shrub, but if people ask for it as a tree, it'll show up.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of times there'll be a lot of something at a nursery,
Yeah,
and it'll also correspond to your street tree list, and you'll see a spate of a certain type of tree proposed for replanting from a particular neighborhood because of a price and availability. So, yeah, those are important considerations.
yeah. Yeah, under the red maples that start showing up in 4.5-foot strips, there's a variety of clones listed, which is a good thing. And
Yeah, okay, yeah. A lot of those, I think, are locally grown hybrids or
yeah,
clones.
we have some really good nurseries that develop their own, and some of those are local.
I think these ones, the J.F. Schmidt Company in Boring, the descriptions for these are from their website?
Yeah,
so-
they originated some of these,
Okay.
and they got going immediately after the Second World War, and was one of the first big nurseries to start shipping virtually everything they grow back east.
Mm-hmm.
And which helped the nursery trade really develop in this area.
Okay, so how does the committee feel? Do you want me to bring this back another time?
I'd like to. I do have some commentary. I've been going through a little bit of it, but
Sure.
I'd like to send that in. It's a little different format than this, but
Okay, yeah.
it would be quite adequate to get. And I want to go through it again, and I just haven't gotten to it.
Well, yeah, and I also wanted to be able to bring back the heritage tree modifications from the last meeting as well.
Yeah.
So that's not a problem. If you've got some addendums, just email me those and I'll get them in before May.
I did just notice we have honey locust on here. They're
Oh, we still
a potential problem. They're not.
did see that?
Yeah, they are showing up as an invasive in spots. They're real limited to where they show up, though.
Okay, yeah.
And
Yeah.
and they're a suckering plant too. The trees will come up from the whatever rootstock they use. So it's
We have 3 varieties.
yeah. I don't know if any of those are seedless. That would be preferable if that was. I'll do some looking at those.
Okay, let me make a note of that, sorry.
Yeah.
Maureen Locust, was that one? That's is that what you're talking about?
Triacanthos, yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Hey, Pete, I've got kind of a non-technical question, but there are certain tree species that at a certain time of year that is send out stuff. It's kind of real sticky, kind of sappy stuff, and if you have a car parked on one of those, it just drives you absolutely crazy.
Yeah, that's normally an insect, like an aphid or some kind of scale that is basically defecating on your car.
Well, yeah, but I guess what I'm looking at is I'm wondering if there's any particular species that we have on the. No, it's not a thing.
Well, I think we've tried to steer clear of anything that was messy or sticky or fruity
okay, I just
or
wanted to-
dropped heavy nuts and
Yeah.
those kinds of things
See what's
that we know
I wish I
of.
could get my wife to start parking under those.
So what I would, I think once we send this out for review before going up to the city commission, we'll have it checked by an arborist, a second arborist,
Okay,
for any fatal flaws.
sure.
Yeah.
I don't see any European birch on here, so they're one of the ones susceptible to that issue.
Oh, birch, yeah.
And
Just looking at the section we were talking about, the shrubby trees, I happen to think the shrubby trees are important from a wildlife value, but you've got a lot of them here. You have, serviceberries, 3 different species here, western and 2 others, and those certainly are a large shrub. And I'm glad you've got them in here, because I think the issue here is not just upright trunked trees, but some other values. So if we start down the path of Catenius, for instance, the one we were talking about, smoke tree, looking at it, then we got to look at all these other ones. And I think they have value to keep them in here. Just how I feel.
Yeah, there are a few that are new additions, and I believe the service berries are.
And I think they're very,
new.
very valuable in the right area.
Well, the Lavis and the Western were, I think, on the original list, and then there's one that you were seeing a lot of in the Portland metro area, that Friends of Trees plants, which is a hybrid, I believe. But
Yeah, well, there's the ones down at
yeah,
the new traffic circle there at the Jug Handle project.
Oh.
There's some very nice tree form hybrid ones. I forget the exact name. We should note on the glory bower tree that it's a suckering tree. It's-
clerodendron.
Yeah, it'll send up new trees like 10 feet away or further. If you're mowing them off, in a lawn, it doesn't matter, but
Suckers.
yeah, it does sucker. That's how I got mine. I dug up suckers,
Okay.
and they're suckering.
Yeah. Okay.
So, anyway,
Okay.
Right. Thank you.
yeah.
Comments? All right. Any more comments on the street trees, or are we?
It's really good. A lot of work here.
Yeah, it's getting there.
Yep. Yeah, we'll get her there. Okay. So should we just go on to the
Member reports?
staff member reports?
Sure. I think Bob has something to share.
Okay, I could go ahead and start. I went ahead and attended a Earth Day events planning meeting over at Clackamas Community College, and I think everybody should have a copy of the agenda for the events that week. And if feel free to photocopy it, post it anywhere. I also worked to get an electronic copy out to everybody. I had some problems this afternoon sending it to everybody. But why don't I go ahead and just talk about the events that will be taking place that week, then talk a little bit more about the events tied to the committee. On Wednesday, April 17th at Clackamas County Community College, there will be a community resource fair in the community center from 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. The big event on Wednesday, April 17th from 7 to 9 p.m., John Francis, the Planet Walker, will give a keynote address, Walking as if the Earth Mattered, Redefining the Environment, in the Gregory Forum. And this event is sponsored by the Earth and Spirit Council and the CCC Renewable Energy Resource Center. John Francis will also be putting on a workshop in the Gregory Forum on Thursday from 6:30 to 9:30 p.m. The cost is $10 for students and a sliding scale from $25 to $40 for others. Nobody will be turned away. If you're interested in attending the workshop, please call 503-594-3696 to sign up in advance. On Friday, April 19th from 9:30 to 12:30, there will be a Generation Waking Up Experience, a 3-hour multimedia peer-led workshop sponsored by the Earth Wisdom Alliance. And there will also be a community resource fair from 12:30 to 1:30. And both events take place at the Gregory Forum. If people want to sign up for the free workshop, we'll call the same number again, 503-594-3696. On Saturday, from 10 to 11 at the Environmental Learning Center, there will be a community discussion on climate change. Pete's indicated that he'll be participating. I'll be there as representative of the Natural Resources Committee. And the point of this, I think, is just to talk a little bit about potential climate change impacts in the Northwest, activities that the Oregon City's been doing in that field, try to lead a discussion. There's a really good article about what local jurisdictions were doing related to climate change in last week's Oregon City newspaper. I can get copies to anybody if they didn't see that. Something that'd be helpful for me is I was looking to participate in the community resource fair on Wednesday. I've got the event, Wednesday from 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. to try to talk up the discussion on Saturday. I think this is also an opportunity to get out other information about environmental related topics and events that are taking place locally. So I don't know if anybody else might be available to help me staff a table, during that period between 11 and 2. Or if you want to forward some information to me, I can print it out and share it, with the students that'll be attending the community resource fair. Any general questions?
The day you needed help was what day again?
Wednesday, April 17th, 11 to 2 p.m.
Okay.
I think it's an opportunity not only to plug the event on Saturday, but just any kind of general
Right.
things. If there's any handouts that the Basin Council might be appropriate for that event, we get stuff out that way. And it just kind of a general thing, because obviously the students who would be attending this, some of them are going to be from Oregon City, some are going to be from other places in Clackamas County and beyond.
I might be able to help you that day.
Oh, that'd be great, Chair.
But that's in the evening, right?
No, this is 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. It's
Okay,
the
so,
top event.
Oh,
on
now
the
I see it.
calendar.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And also, if I could use any outreach help or assistance, just kind of plugging the Saturday climate change discussion. It's just going to be for an hour and stuff, and hopefully get the ball rolling with the climate change subcommittee of this group.
I'm glad you're involved in this.
Well, thank you.
You got right into it. That's really good.
That's pretty much
It's
all I
about the
have.
only link we have to the college, right, in this group, is what you're doing. That's really good. Yeah.
Okay.
I think it's really great, Bob, that you're starting to shed light on this issue and how it's impacting us locally, and what local governments are starting to do to address it.
Thank you.
I'm looking forward to a good discussion. Yeah, there's a lot of events going on that week, so we're going to talk about some of those as well. But yeah, the article that was in the Oregon City News did not mention Oregon City, because it mentioned a lot of the other cities, and I was a little surprised by that, because.
You're talking about for the cleanup, or?
No, not before the climate change
Oh, for the
issues at the
climate,
local
Right.
level. But at the same time, I think that it is an issue that's near and dear to the City Commission's heart, and some of the initiatives that are being done across the river and abutting Oregon City are really good regional efforts. So I hope that we can keep the light shining on this. Mm-hmm.
We will.
You want to talk about the Lower Clackamas Task Force?
Yeah.
Okay.
Why don't you start off with
Sure.
that?
The Lower Clackamas River Task Force, we're going to have a meeting on April 23rd was our plan. For those that were interested, I know the gentleman on the end was interested. John, Lewis, and myself and Brian, we're trying to figure out what we can really do to meet with agencies about what realistically can be done on the river. And John, I spoke to John today, and I don't think we're ready to have another meeting on April 23rd until we've got a much better idea of what's possible. John has not been able to bring together one or two agency people that he felt were important, but John has money. This is the thing I picked up on real quick, to do some staff assistance to this committee, or Lower River Task Force, to help us identify what the issues are related to agencies. And he indicated that he would be willing to involve a consulting person, a water resource person. I don't remember who it was. Pacific Water Resources, or somebody like Pacific Habitat, maybe Dr. I'm not sure. But somebody of that nature, to be with a small group of us just to discuss what the agencies might have an interest in supporting or not. Otherwise, we're wasting our time if they have no interest in helping us or working with us. So what Brian and I were talking about was putting off the April meeting, frankly, until June, until we've had a chance to do this, because we could get ourselves moving in a direction that's going to go nowhere without agencies in a minute could stop any of our momentum that we might have. Another thing that did happen, John told me, which is pretty amazing, the first meeting did spawn some interest in saving the trolley car bridge. Brian had an interest in that. And I would kind of like to see something done with it rather than it collapse. We're talking about a 1,000-ton bridge that was ready to collapse 10 years ago. Well, it's ready to collapse again. And Metro stepped up, John told me this week, Metro stepped up and is actually putting together a plan to try to stabilize that bridge and make it into part of their trail system, which I'm stunned. I mean, that's pretty amazing if that's true.
Is that a request for proposals, or what?
I'm
form
not quite
is it?
sure,
Okay.
but they've got it in their trail master planning process now, that's a part of their trail master planning process. So,
Okay.
Metro I never expected that. 10 years ago, we tried to get Metro to do that. When the first incidence of the bridge collapse was predicted, expected, and no one wanted to take any interest in it. So that's a good thing. That's probably an outgrowth of our first meeting, I would say.
Jerry, I've got one question.
Yes, sir.
Sometimes it seems like when you get elected officials kind of engaged and involved, it kind of motivates the agencies to kind of show up and do things. Do you have any specific elected officials who are kind of committed to working with you guys to get stuff going, or if it's because
You're absolutely correct. I would have to say Gladstone has one or two people that are really committed to trying to save that bridge, and I saw the mayor tonight about something else of Gladstone, but I would say those two people would drive an interest to save the bridge. There is an entire path system, trail system, that was going to link between Cross Park and Dahl Beach Park, which is across from Oregon City's Clackamas Park. That's going away. It's being eroded away by the river right now. So there's another interest that they would have. Oregon City, John indicated to me that he's committed, and I think Mayor Neely might be too. I don't know. We could approach him. There's
I was thinking not so much about the bridge as far as just kind of like the whole task force, because if you have elected officials make requests for agency involvement, it has a little bit more juice than regular citizens.
True. Well, and there's the third party that could help us here is West Lynn. I mean, there's 3 cities that you might not realize have an interest in the Lower Clackamas that own a plant that the county basically operates called the Tri-City Plant, and that plant could be affected by continued changes in river course and things like that. So I think there's a way to get West Lynn involved too. That's really a good idea. Brian, what are your thoughts here?
Well, they're going to have to be involved if anything's going to move forward. So, it's pretty much a foregone conclusion. We have had city staff involved more than city officials at this point in time. John Lewis has been involved. He's actually the one that really got the ball rolling on finding out who owned that bridge, because nobody seemed to know at the start. And I contacted Clackamas County Emergency Management, and they pretty much dropped the ball. They didn't know who it was, and didn't go very far up the ladder there. But John did an excellent job.
Yes, he did.
So, but the city of Gladstone does have elected officials interested in that bridge, because they see it as a nice, we don't absolutely have to have it. There is another bridge, but it would make a nicer trail system if we did have it. So, but it's, but we need a bigger agency because it's split up between 2 jurisdictions, and Metro could be the ideal one.
Could be.
So,
yeah, that's encouraging.
yeah.
In a different sense, I mean, Metro, of course, but I mean, you've got the whole coalition of people that have carried out the trolley trail project. I mean, I presume they all have an interest, don't they?
Yeah, and the trolley used to be through the main center part of Gladstone, was down the middle of the street.
Exactly.
And it's gone now, so the trail goes so far, and then it's basically not there. But they could use the city streets and continue that straight out to that bridge.
Oh, sure. I mean, after they restructured the street there, I mean, it's far wider than the 2 lanes. I mean, you could stripe it or whatever for a bike path if you chose.
Yeah, they could put a path on one side or use the sidewalks even. And, it's all.
Through 1952, there was a trolley that went down Main Street in Oregon City that crossed Clackamas Cove in elevated land that's potentially area for development now because it's higher, and then crossed on that trolley, and then it ended in 1952. So you're absolutely correct.
Well, yeah. I mean, it seems fairly obvious that the trolley bridge would be a good part of the trolley trail if you knew how to make it happen.
Yeah, well, that trail goes all the way back and almost to Selwood, and it'll be connected with some of the other trail systems eventually.
Well, that's what I understood. There's a plan to connect through to the trail that goes through Oaks Park.
Yeah.
Now, Margie's here, and Margie was working with Representative Bill Kennemer and others to try to see if they would have an interest in working to figure out what the agencies might be receptive to or not. And her question to myself and Brian was, what are the questions that we need to ask the agencies? I think if we have this meeting in late April or May with John Lewis, which I hope that some of us will come to, especially you, Doctor.
Just let me know when it occurs, and I'll certainly try to, yeah.
Right, we will. This small meeting to look at what the agencies would respond to and not will tell us the questions that we need to give to Representative Kennemer and Representative
Yes.
Barton and who knows, Senator Alan Olson, I suppose. I don't know, but this thing is very huge. It's a very huge issue.
Well, and it seems to me, kind of common sense too. You'll look at who might have resources to bring to the table.
Yeah.
We're talking about Metro relative to the trolley bridge. Well, you've got ODOT relative to the Highway 99 bridge. You've got the Marine Board relative to the Clackamas Park boat ramp.
Yeah.
There's several parties that do have resources they could commit if they thought there was a resolution that could be implemented.
And at least 1,000 feet of potential trail that Gladstone wanted to build is going away because of erosion issues right now. So,
Okay.
all right.
I've got a couple of things that I'd like to bring up. Over the weekend, I went to the website that displays the local water gauge that's in Oregon City on the Willamette. And they had a big announcement there. It said, over 300 water gauges are going to be closed due to the sequester. And they had a link to, by state, the list of ones being closed, and lo and behold, the one here in Oregon City was on the list.
Yep.
And so I started calling people, and the news got out and traveled far and wide pretty quickly. And then we found out that the only thing being proposed to be closed was the rain gauge at all these different water gauges, and whereas their website just said water gauges, it didn't say anything that it was going to be just the rain gauges which are at the same location as the water gauges. So in a sense, it was a false alarm. Because if they had been planning to close on May 1st this local water gauge, that it would make life here much more difficult, because we would have no idea what the potential for flooding right here would be, or how big the floods were, and so on. And in a city this size, we need to know those things,
Right.
And so anyway, that one generated some interest, but fortunately,
I don't think it's totally done, but you continue.
yeah. Well, I think that the people there like the attention, evidently, because they have pretty much routine jobs, but so they actually told me that they appreciate phone calls because it gives them something interesting to do. And so
That's the staff that monitors the rain gauge?
USGS.
Yeah.
USGS.
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, historically, the rain gauge function was done at 10 a.m. every morning at Willamette Falls Locks. And that was done up until 8 years ago when the locks closed. And if I wanted to know a river level that was accurate and immediate to a morning, shall we say, I would call the lockmaster, and he would always give me that reading where I could, go up there, go down the road toward the locks, and then look down myself. Brian's right, the staff didn't realize that they were suggesting the rain gauge was going to be discontinued. But I think it was a good thing that we got their attention to it, because who knows what's next. And the issue is if you have a flood and you don't know what the base level of the river is at a given day and they're predicting a 10-foot rise, what does that mean? It means nothing. You have to have that information. So it's really, really important.
Yeah.
By the way, if you want to see that rain gauge, that river gauge, you go to the turn of 99E in Oregon City. There's a little park there called Willamette River View Plaza Park, which we did the landscape work there and so forth with youth. Look down, the building's right there. And by the way, that building did flood in 1996. It went underwater, that gauge. So,
I have a question. What would the impact of removal of the rain gauges have on the quality of information coming from those stations?
Well, evidently the National Weather Service are the ones that are upset because they like having secondary rain gauges all over the place, to give them a better idea of what rainfall distribution really is. But as far as planning here for flooding, it doesn't make much difference because the floods are controlled not just by local rainfall. It's from throughout the entire Willamette Valley, the Cascades, and so on. And the peak floods are usually a while after the rainfall may have stopped here. I did observe in the 96 that it crested during clear sunny weather. The day after the rain had stopped, after raining for several days. Well, we were in California at a trade show, came home, and there was a flood, you know. Of course, there was flooding in California, too. But, you know, so it's, I don't think it's a major thing because it's not information we use locally. It would be nice to have it just out of curiosity as much as anything. But, it just cuts back a little bit on the information that is available for the scientific types to study.
Though out of curiosity, does anybody know? I mean, it's quite common that other volunteer groups maintain rain gauges and other data collection, like the community college or
I would
whomever.
have to. Yeah, I don't know what's being done, but I wouldn't be surprised that somebody's doing it somewhere. And just the government ones traditionally have stayed in place pretty much.
I just really wonder, I didn't ask the gentleman when I called the number to find out, is this thing really going away, and why is it going away? And he told me, as Brian said, that no, just the rain gauge. I don't know how much maintaining rain gauge is in terms of cost compared to running the station. It doesn't make sense to me.
It's hard to believe you'd save much money.
I think it's all automated. You know, it
Exactly.
collects the rain for a day, then it dumps it and measures it, and
Right.
you're done. You know.
Yep.
Less electricity.
Yeah. You know, they don't have to maintain the reporting system, which includes putting it on the internet. But you know, all of that's automated as far as I can tell.
So I guess my feeling is it doesn't hurt to have them hear from people, you know, about this issue. One, about the importance of the actual flood, the water gauge, but also, is it that important to be getting rid of? What can we do to retain this rain gauge? That's my next question to him. And the fellow is real nice, and it's all being imposed from above. So he said we really appreciate hearing from people. So.
And you found out because you went to the rain gauge website?
Well, that's how I found out about it originally. But he actually called. There's a number on there with a fellow to call for this area, and both Jerry and I have talked to him.
Right. We were going to actually talk to Representative Kennemer and others if it took that to raise the issue to the point that, you know, this would not go away in terms of importance, because it is really important. I mean, it's certainly the river gauge for sure. So anyway.
Okay.
I've got a question here. I see the Oregon City Annual Cleanup Day flyer. I guess it's this thing here. I don't see any sites. Does it have sites on it?
If you go to the website, there's a map, an
Okay.
interactive map that, and I just found this on the web and just printed it out. So
Okay.
There's a poster outside in the lobby for this event too, which is different than what you're seeing here.
Oh, I see.
But it's the same event at Clackamas Park.
All right.
And then so we can talk about that in my. I was going to present that as one of the staff reports.
Oh, okay. Good. Okay.
Okay. Yeah.
And then I have one other question. I want to let other people speak here first, though. Just have a question at some point.
Well, if you've got one, just go
Okay.
ahead.
I feel like this group needs to get out and look at things in the field. Not this spring, but say fall. And the reason I'm saying that is I see a lot of the mitigation plantings along the strips of Highway 213, shall we say, Moelle Avenue, that were native plants in assemblages are now having to be groomed, it looks like to me. And probably because they need to be maintained in that manner. I'm not saying that they don't. But I think we ought to get out and look at the detention areas that the city has, just to go on a tour with John Lewis or a few other people and use the trolley if it's allowed. Is the trolley still in service or not?
The trolley coordination would be through Nancy Bush still.
Okay.
And then Eric Herring is a good contact for the stormwater and detention areas.
Yeah.
Because he's the stormwater supervisor.
Okay.
Yeah, he was also on the Oregon City Graded Watershed Council.
Anyway, have a tour that involves this group, but opens it up to the community, and maybe includes some fall foliage trees, you know, the beauty of the fall foliage, to really get out and look at things, because I feel like we're spending time here, and we talked about trying to do some things for the community. We weren't quite ready. This would be an easy thing to do. I planned a couple of the fall foliage tours in the past for Oregon City Cleanup when I was leading it, and I just think like we got great people in this group, and I think we ought to look at doing something to get the public out in the field and look at things. I don't mean for reality check, just for our purposes and to show people what's going on. I don't know how the committee feels about it. Not talking about till fall.
Yeah, it sounds, we do need to get out and see things in the, ourselves, and that would be a good way of doing it, so.
I think the important thing would just be kind of the balance of sites and topics that you cover, and also, I guess, just make sure that there's resources to cover the
Right.
cost. I know what we have budgeted for the committee for activities, but we just want to make sure that we got everything covered.
Do we have a budget, this committee?
I will check and see what it is. I think there is some administrative budget, but I don't know how much.
Be a chance to celebrate your arbor, your Tree City USA thing. Look
Right.
at some significant trees that are. I know which ones are around in the tours I used to do that are significant fall foliage specimens. And then
Yeah.
maybe look at some of the allied things that just have to do with habitat and how it's working. And
Certainly, there's probably several departments that could potentially help out on these kinds of activities, and then we are getting better at coordinating those types of events. So I think it's a good idea.
I used to produce a timed itinerary. We kept to that itinerary, and we were able to get to the sites, and it worked out really well for the most part. So I'd be willing to work on that.
Okay,
Bring a
great.
draft
'Cause
to you maybe next
kind
month
of-
or something, and anybody else would like to work together on it. Sounds good to me.
Certainly, it fulfills our outreach and objectives as well. So yeah.
Okay. I had one other thing that I've, in researching grants for another body, I ran across the fact that there's substantial federal grants to develop volunteerism within cities. And I think that I'm going to send those links to Bob, since he's interested in that, and see if we can get going. It requires that the mayor be the person actually asking for the grant. But that doesn't mean he has to develop everything himself. He is aware of it. I've communicated with him. And there's really two styles of grants. One requires that you hire a full-time volunteer coordinator, which the grant pays for, and that's a substantial $100,000 to $200,000 grant. I don't know if that's right for Oregon City, but you can have also smaller grants for specific projects. And I looked at the list of what they awarded, and it would be easy to come up with a better and more comprehensive volunteer program than what they were actually doing. They were doing really minor projects, I thought, and still got grants awarded to them. And I think that Oregon City could do an excellent job with if they were willing to do that. And so I think that would be a really good thing that would meet some of the things that we've talked about, and would also get citizens involved in the parks especially.
What's the deadline?
We've got a fair amount of time at this point. I don't remember the exact dates.
Pete, how does the city handle grant writing?
Well, we still have the Metro Enhancement Grant funds, which is paid for out of the Metro tonnage that goes through the facility there. So that's like every ton of garbage deposited over there, the city gets a cut of that for enhancement projects, which are awarded. And that was coordinated by Michelle Benville for a while.
Yeah.
and the other grant is the downtown business storefront improvement grants, and those are the two that I know of
No,
that
I
we're
can't.
running. But
How does the city applies for grants? It is
we don't have a grant writer for the, per se, position. So you have to write a grant to get a grant writing position. But yet, it's been done as an extra activity of staff in addition to their normal other activities. So, for example, whenever Nancy Kroshauer would write a grant for projects like the drug handle, that was extra overtime that she put in to do that, and that obviously panned out really well. So that's the way it's been today. It's just above and beyond what we would normally do, but it depends on how much time we have and if we and if the city council supports it. So I think I would like to know more about this. I think all departments would. Yeah.
I've written some successful grants involving volunteers, and that I'd be willing to work. If the city decided as an organization they'd want to apply for the grant, I would be willing to work with staff to research and produce. I've written like best management practices for volunteer oversight and stuff.
We are. I'm not going to say we have additional staff that could do that just yet, but we do have additional staff member now, which is helping us with our additional workload. I'd like to explore that with Tony Conkle, the Community Development Director, and say, how much of the staff time would you like to devote to grant writing and support of grant writing, and then we could, make it formal. That's certainly something I can pursue with them.
If
5%, whatever.
If the city can commit to this, I think it could be carried out, especially if there's some funds available that could be used sort of like matching type funds to show them that we're not solely dependent on them. That's always good in the grant writing process.
So it'd be good to know the time frame for submittal. I'd like to run this up to the managers. So Tony and John and Scott, because potentially anything that we do as a committee affects multiple departments who have differing staffs, and some departments have more available staff than others. And
this doesn't have to be a parks-related volunteer effort, but it certainly can.
It could be.
So now, a lot of police departments have volunteer. Obviously things like Neighborhood Watch when they're active and stuff like that. So there could be some law enforcement, community justice involvement too. Pursued.
You probably want to talk to Chief Jim Band, who's our new police chief since Mike Conrad has announced his retirement.
Who's your new chief?
Well, Mike Conrad's going to be acting as chief for the next 6 months, but he's retiring. And then Jim Band Jim Band, Lieutenant Jim Band, is going to be new police chief. And they do have a strong emphasis now on community outreach, and they have a community liaison police officer as well. I forget his name, but I've met him at a couple of meetings.
Another area that Oregon City is starting to fall behind on is emergency preparedness volunteerism.
Right.
And some other jurisdictions have developed that quite a ways. And I just attended a meeting that touched on that subject, and a lot of the people in the audience had taken part in that training. And but it needs to be, that's something that the city ought to be doing, and they're not. So that would be another direction that this could go.
There's already a curriculum, community emergency response team.
It's just a matter of implementing it on a local level. It's very, very possible to do.
Before the next big one hits.
Which is anytime any day starting tomorrow in the next 300 or 400 years.
Yeah, I think the neighborhood associations and the Citizen Involvement Council would probably be best to coordinate that with the various neighborhoods.
Yeah.
It is something, there was a presentation about precisely this to the CIC several months ago, and I'm not sure that it ever went anywhere. It talked about, how to develop a neighborhood response plan with your neighbors, and there was a handout that you would hand out with your neighbors at a picnic or a meal or whatever, and then make sure that people had their FEMA checklist and had it ready to go. And then if somebody had particular important items that could be used during an emergency, you would know that person would volunteer that service or that equipment in an emergency ahead of time, which is
Yeah,
which
who's
is the
got
point.
a generator, and there's all sorts of things.
Yeah.
Who's
Yeah.
got a basement full of toilet paper?
That's right. And 60-gallon drums of water.
Yeah. So, well, I just saw a presentation on this, but neighborhoods would be key in that. So anyway, that's outside of our area of expertise, but it's still of interest.
No, I think it's a great recommendation. I think Katie Riggs she's our liaison to the CIC, the Citizen Involvement Council.
Okay.
She's also the assistant to the city manager, but it would be something that we would suggest through the CIC, I think.
Katie's the liaison to the CIC.
Yes,
Does she go to their meetings?
Yes. Yeah.
Good.
Okay.
Okay.
So I'll email out the links to different websites and so on.
Okay. Great.
Okay.
Yeah. Thank you. Look for that. So, if you're
Okay.
ready for me, okay.
All right. Anybody else? Just before we. Okay. Go ahead, Pete.
Thanks. I've been taking notes. So
All right.
I don't know if I discussed this with you, but I did talk to Richard Craven about the secretary position and the duties that would involve, and he did acquiesce and mention that he could do that. But I don't think we've formally blessed his acquiescence at this point. I did want to recap and say the committee has the option of just using our video as our minutes, or from this point forward developing a very basic set of motions and items discussed from the agenda. And both of those options appeal to Richard, but I think it deserves kind of a decision on the part of the whole group as to how we want our minutes presented. If we're happy just with the video and the agenda, then that's what we can rely on by law. Or if we want to actually have a formal set of minutes for people to download, which would be very short, we can do that as well. But it would be up to the secretary to generate that.
Okay, but Richard said that he was willing to do that then?
He did.
Okay.
To me, but then we got lost in other details during the meeting and didn't talk about it. So I would recommend we talk about it at the next meeting.
I think any formal action we make should be recorded and reported to us, and I would rather not go through a video to try to find it.
Yeah, yeah.
Just basic stuff, you know, not every presentation by the public necessarily. Not that they're important, they are.
Right.
But, you know, actions we take as a body, I think, should be.
And that's why we need a
Reported.
secretary.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think he'd be an excellent secretary. Matter of fact, he'd be my number one suggestion.
Oh, yeah. Especially since he's not here.
Especially since Well, good. Okay. And I'm taking notes of this meeting.
Yeah,
so.
we can, I'd like to have him here when we discuss this, so. But, yeah, it doesn't have to be super detailed, just so that the main points are there.
All right, so just want before. So the other items that I have to share with you, as Bob mentioned, there's several things going on the week of April 15th through Earth Day, which is officially, I think, the April 22nd. April 17th is a big day at Clackamas Community College. And then April 17th is also the official Arbor Day events that we have going this year. This will be our second Oregon City Arbor Day. And we've got 4 things planned with various partners on that day, including a tree planting event at McLaughlin Elementary School at 12:30 and through 1:30. Eric Carr's organization, Clackamas County Soil and Water Conservation District, has got a free tree giveaway. You can contact Eric to reserve trees. There are limited quantities of trees available. I think they're 1, 2, and 5 gallon size trees.
What kind of trees?
I don't know.
There's a list that I saw
Yeah.
on the website.
They are all natives, I believe, and they're planning to, have Eric will be, organizing the giveaway on the 17th, but you can call and reserve in advance.
Where do you come to get them? Here?
I think I put my poster over on your desk.
Yeah, I've got it right here.
Okay. So yeah, you would call Eric and reserve. I think you're gonna. I think they're gonna come to City Hall or to the parking lot across the street to
Okay.
pick them up. So they'd be back in the back of a pickup,
Good.
or in a parking space here.
Okay.
But they should definitely coordinate with Eric on that. Maureen Cole, our library director, is organizing a poetry reading. There's a poetry competition, which is not on this form, that the library is organizing as well. And the reward for the best poem is going to be read. The poem would be read by the Oregon Poet Laureate, and that's not listed on the poster, but that's something that the library is doing.
You mean read that day by the poet laureate?
No, that'll be on Arbor Day, so
Oh,
that'll
okay.
be the National Arbor Day. So
Okay.
then get back on track here. In the evening, which is City Commission meeting, we'll have presentation of the Tree City USA Award to the mayor by the Oregon Department of Forestry.
Oh, okay.
So
So we should be there.
if you would like to attend, I brought a copy of.
Wednesday.
We're going to have a presentation of a plaque in the city, and then we'll be flying the Tree City USA flag on our flagpole
Wow. Neat.
from the Arbor Day Foundation.
You got it upside down.
If you fly it upside down, the trees are in trouble.
And
Wow.
Well,
Yeah.
gosh, it was just the way they planted them,
so that'll be a few other things. We will also be presenting the Heritage Tree Awards to our 2 Heritage Tree recipients from last year. So we've got the plaques made up and certificates ready.
Okay.
And I need to get your signature, Brian, on the certificates for the Heritage Tree Awards.
Okay.
For
Is
the
that something this year, or should I come
no,
in another time?
I'll need to coordinate you. I'm getting them printed at the print shop, and then
Okay.
we'll get some ink on there from you and Doug from Mayor Neely, and then put them in frames for Wednesday evening.
Neat.
So that's what we got going on.
So
this
that's next
year.
Wednesday's commission meeting.
Yeah, that'll be the award ceremony in the evening. If you can attend any of the events, feel free to come by. The McLaughlin Elementary School, Ginger Redlinger is having her kids do a poetry reading as well at the school at 12:30 to 1:30. And the Parks Department is planting a dozen trees out behind McLaughlin Elementary School. Around near the school and around the track area, with the money from the Big Tree Project that City Manager David Frazier approved last year. So that's something that'll be done. Actually, the trees will be planted by a contractor, and then the kids are going to help backfill the holes. So on April 17th. So that's what we're doing this year, and
It's really nice to see this activism. This is
yeah, well, it's been a good partnership. It'll be nice, I think, as as each Arbor Day gets better organized, we can hopefully pull more partners in and potentially get more sites planted each year. And the Tree City USA program is an ongoing program as well. So each year we get are in the program, we have to show that we're expanding it and that sort of thing. So that's Arbor Day. Other reports. May is Preservation Month in Oregon, and the State Historic Preservation Commission is going to present an award to Oregon City in May. Christina Robertson Gardner is our preservation planner in our department, we present locally the Ruth Powers Historic Preservation Award every year.
Powers.
Yeah.
Yep. Goes way back. That's
Yeah. So keep an eye out. There's a website for that on the Oregon City website, and there's going to be.
I wonder if this committee knows who she is. Oh, I
No, you
know her
wanna-
story very well. but-
Yeah, go ahead.
Well, she,
yeah.
a very wealthy lady, along with the Bloom family's good close friend, Ruth. That part will come to me in a second. Came together to buy and furnish historic homes in Oregon City. In the Ermatinger house, though the furniture may be in there or not in there right now because of the work they're doing on, was furnished by Ruth Powers. She also furnished the Holmes estate, which is Rose Farm,
Okay.
and maybe 3 other homes that she purchased the materials to furnish them and/or purchase the home and pay for the restoration. And I'm sorry I forgot the name of the other lady. They worked together on this, and that's pretty amazing. And they're both deceased people now, but
She also lived in the McLaren house. That's where she lived, up off Warner Parrot.
really?
Good.
Her daughter was Diana Evans. Diana Powder Evans.
Okay. But very generous lady that was committed to the point of making sure that things happened. In spite of other people not knowing what to do, she made sure that they happened with the assistance, financial assistance that she made possible.
Yeah, and so that's
Ruth.
that's an ongoing thing. And Christina and the people who own historically designated homes in McLaughlin, Kenema neighborhoods, and the ones that are designated outside of the districts, clearly are big participants in this process, and it's been a very successful program so far.
The other person was Ruth Zentbauer. Thank you. I needed that. Zentbauer. And
Okay.
they were very wealthy people. They're the ones that founded Jansen Knitting Mills
Jensen, yeah.
as a startup business. They used to make gloves, form-fitting gloves. And then somebody said, I won't go into it in great detail, can you make us look better? Us Portland business people look lousy in our swimwear. That's where Jansen swimwear came from, was Ruth and Zentbauer.
Okay, good to know.
Yeah.
I guess the tie-in to the natural resources aspect of historic preservation is something that Christina always says. She's like, the greenest home is the one that's already built.
Okay. Yeah.
And to the extent that you can refurbish and
Well,
keep going,
they have a commission like we do to do special things. The
Right.
Historic Preservation Commission. is
Yeah,
that
well,
they're
the
called?
Historic Review Board is our review body for alterations and new construction in the districts, and they are governed. They have a governing authority under the Historic Overlay District of the code, so they actually can make decisions as to whether something is historically appropriate or not in Oregon City pursuant to our code. And they are a 5-member body. Yeah.
But Kenema District, McLaughlin District, these areas that have historic character, and there's others besides that, owe their allegiance to the fact that this has been an ongoing thing that cities had.
Yeah, it's supported by we are a certified local government in the program. There are, as a certified local government, homeowners can qualify for tax abatement on historic homes for provided they maintain their homes according to historic preservation guidelines. And in addition to that, the city provides grant assistance for window renovation and other types of repairs to keep older homes in good shape. So, let's see. A couple of cleanup events that are on the Solve website right here in Oregon City. There will be the Newell Creek Canyon cleanup, which is organized and supported by several partners, Metro, Oregon State Parks, PGE, Clean Water Services, and several corporate partners. And they are going to be doing they're going to be working in Mountain View Cemetery to remove invasive plant material and revegetate with native plants at the entrance to the Canyon Trail. And that is scheduled for 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. Saturday, 20th of April. There's also, at the same time, the Clackamas Park cleanup event at Clackamas Park, which is being coordinated by Nancy Bush in code enforcement. The coordinator for going back to the Newell Creek, the coordinator for that is Bonnie Schaffner at Metro. But I believe Rita from Greater Oregon City Watershed Council and Brian Vaughn and several other partners, including Eric and company, Clackamas County Soil and Water District, have all been working for 3 years on that project, but it's starting to become a real volunteer effort, which is good.
Pete, you mentioned something about a canyon trail. What do you
Yeah,
call that?
I am not familiar with this, as I should be, but there's the Scattering Canyon, they call it locally, is where some of the ashes from bereaved from relatives, you can go and scatter your ashes in the canyon in this area.
Away from the creek.
Pardon?
Away from
Yes,
the
it's
Away from the creek.
it's part of the
yeah.
cemetery.
We'd hope. Yeah, but they call it on the city website. They refer to it as Scattering Canyon, but I think locally it's a headwater of it's a tributary to Newell Creek Canyon. So the long-term plan for that area is invasive species removal and habitat improvement.
I know a little about the project there because
Okay,
of the
great.
involvement of the Greater Oregon City Watershed Council that's worked with the cemetery and the other landowners there on issues like riparian revegetation and the stormwater runoff problem that they have in the upper portion of the canyon. As a matter of fact, I think there still is an ongoing consultation process on the stormwater abatement part of it that hasn't been entirely sorted out yet. But if you're interested or want to see it, I mean, it's you can access it at the lower end of the cemetery. There is in fact a trail that you can walk along and take a look at the site.
Yeah, the minimum age for the Newell Creek cleanup is 18, and so they're saying there's some steep slopes, water on the ground, and potentially slippery
Oh yeah,
situations.
this kind of year it's pretty muddy.
And then Clackamas Park, the minimum age is 12, so you can choose between those two activities.
I wonder if this body is aware of the new bicycle coalition that's come together in Oregon City that's attempting to try to work out some ways to work in the canyon, create a trail. I'm not sure where they're at, but one of the people that is leading that effort, Adam, can't remember his last name, was one of the people that was kind of chided for doing some jumps and other things on the spit of Clackamas Cove. they have now gotten a lot of members together, and I would challenge this committee. I gave the first $10 to take $10 down there and give it to this body of young people that are trying to do something I believe constructive. We need to encourage them to be constructive about working in the canyon. He told me the way that he feels he could best serve and get people aware of the interest that bicycle folks might have would be to get down there and start doing some work with the Greater Oregon City Watershed Council. And I think everybody in this room can give $10 to this effort and become a member of the Bicycle Coalition, because I think our involvement might help encourage them to go in the right direction. And Adam was very honest about what they did, shall we say, in disturbing the North Spit. It has a lot of other problems besides what they did, and was very honest and took responsibility. And so I'm just real impressed with this young man. He can be accessed at River City Cycles, which is down there on Main Street. Used to be Hoff Sporting Goods.
Yeah.
And I want to see everybody here's name in the next 2 months as a member,
Good deal.
as a challenge here. I'm serious. I think we should support them because I think that we could help guide them. You know, Shaw Spady, a member of our committee, is going to speak to the Business Alliance of Oregon City this month, later in April, about that issue and how it should be approached carefully and sensitively. And so,
Is Adam work with Metro? Because I believe Metro is a major landowner in the canyon.
well, everybody keeps saying that, but Metro is not the major landowner. They
major.
are a landowner.
Am I aware of anybody else?
There's a lot of private land.
No. But I'm saying it has a single entity. I believe Metro's the largest landowner.
That might be true. Yeah, and Metro has already been approached by them, and Metro seems to be willing to work with them. But
Okay, that's good.
I just feel like our committee could have, I don't want to say ownership, but direct involvement and help these young people do something constructive. And they want to spend a lot of manpower showing that they're willing to do, not just build trails, bike trails, but do other enhancement work. I think it'd be good to encourage them to go in that direction.
Well, there's a lot of different values in the canyon, and
Oh, yeah.
so I mean, where you put bike trails and do things, you've got erosion, you've got wildlife habitat. There's a lot of
Yeah, I think
issues.
the biggest issue is will they stage what you build and not just start crashing through the woods, which keeps happening over and over again. That's if they can control that, then it could be a good thing.
Because I'm already seeing bike going through over at Kanema, over in the park. They're taking mountain bikes on some of the paths and trails over there already, causing erosion problems.
Yeah, it's a different sort of erosion than you get from anything else. And,
Right.
you know, it's not necessarily that much worse, but it can be if they're irresponsible. And it's that responsibility that they need to have to stay to the developed sites and not just ruin another part of the park, which there's been ongoing problems with.
The final report I have is Richard forwarded me an email from the volunteer, actually a public involvement specialist who's working with ODOT on the passenger rail initiative. Now, this is a project that Oregon Department of Transportation is coordinating with Amtrak and several other partners to look at potential passenger rail routes for improvement that would run concurrently on Amtrak right-of-way, or lines, I should say. And one of the lines that's been selected as a potential line is through Oregon City. And there's going to be an open house, and they are looking for a representative of the Natural Resources Committee to serve on the public involvement steering committee for that project. I will forward you the email that Richard sent me because I didn't have time to send it this afternoon, but I know and they're just looking for a one-time involvement at the open house, which is going to be at the Pioneer Center. And I don't have the date off the top of my head, but it's coming up in May. I want to say May 8th, but don't quote me on that.
May 18th is a Saturday.
I think it's a Saturday.
Okay.
But I don't quote me on the date.
Sure.
Pete,
Yeah.
could you explain just? I guess
Yeah.
obviously I'm familiar with stuff with light rail and
Sure.
metro, but
This-
what's this other? I guess I just
Passenger
understand
rail.
the purpose or the routing or
Well, I don't know any of the details.
That one's, I can
This
see a
is
little
very
about
long
it, if
range.
it's helpful. I mean, this is part of the federally funded high-speed rail project, and it's a planning grant to Oregon to develop a proposal for higher speed rail in the Eugene to Portland corridor that would connect with a project Washington is implementing in the Vancouver, Washington to Bellingham corridor. And I mean, they're talking about basically two things: to increase the speed or travel time, not dramatically, but by 20 or 30 miles an hour maybe or something, and to add to the frequency of trains every day to maybe as much as double the amount of service. And in the course of that, they looked at whether the right answer was to continue to use the Union Pacific line that the Amtrak Cascade uses now, or use pieces or all of the old Oregon Electric line, the right-of-way that's further to the west, or build some entirely new piece somewhere to connect one segment to the other. And they developed a series of alternatives to look at, though as I understood it from the earlier documents I saw, what they quickly found out was that, you could have guessed this, anything other than the current route quickly adds up to really major dollars. I mean, not just small ones. They're talking about things like a 7-mile long tunnel through the hills of Portland, and some things that, just aren't going to happen, I don't think. But anyway, that's what the route part of it is all about. And, I mean, I've gotten involved in this a little bit because any of these routes, but the current Union Pacific line bypasses Oregon City, of course, which is not a great thing if you live here.
Yeah. Great. Well, I
And
know.
by the way, this is a total aside. As I say, I'm somewhat interested in this, and I might be the person to raise my hand here as long as the date is one that I could.
Okay. Well, I'll forward you guys the emails tomorrow. Then there's a link to the project website with the state and a map, and then the date and the address of the lady to coordinate and schedule with is on there. So, all right. Thanks for the information, Doug. Knew somebody would know more about it than I would.
I'm a train rider, so this thing caught my
good.
eye
Yeah.
from the start.
Yeah. All right. Well, that's basically all I have for this evening.
Okay. So if I'll have a chance to speak here, we've got our next meeting is scheduled for May 8th. And if anyone has agenda items that need to be on there that pop up in the next 3 weeks or so, I'll get them to Pete.
Yep. Get them to me as early as you can, so
Yeah.
that we can prep an agenda.
Yeah.
Right. Thanks, everybody.
So we'll have the tree report again.
We will be looking at the street tree list, and we will have the Heritage Tree Code amendments that were pretty much, they are 75% there, and I will include the majority, all of those, and bring them back to you on May 8th.
Okay.
One agenda idea, perhaps, I don't know whether it'd be appropriate for May or later in the summer, and that is the Newell Creek Canyon thing. When the Watershed Council and the landowners agree on this next stormwater runoff step, it might be good to have a little progress report. I'm sure Dick or someone else from the Watershed Council could do that for us.
Yeah, that sounds good.
Do you know, if we're going to do that, it'd be neat to have something from Metro, too, because I'm just trying to figure out kind of like the master plan, kind of the big picture with the canyon. Because what they say, one of the
Okay.
largest undeveloped tracts.
So I could
And-
ask Brian Vaughn if he's ready to present.
Maybe as long as we're covering Newell Creek Canyon, it'd be kind of nice to kind of triangulate it, understand what's happening.
Yeah, that might be timely. I know that Brian Vaughn had mentioned wanting to come back and talk to you about that. Oh,
Yeah. If it's an opportune time, it'd be worthwhile.
yeah.
I wouldn't mind getting over to the canyon before Jerry's bus tour too. Would be appropriate.
Yeah,
Yeah,
there-
it would be. Well,
there's
absolutely.
there's more than one way into that canyon.
Oh,
There's a road access from the top of the hill near the Fred Meyers, and I'm not sure where that goes. I haven't gotten back there to explore it.
I've gone down on that, but
Okay.
for a fall foliage natural resource tour, that's what is on my mind as a theme. We used to
Yeah.
discuss the canyon. It's very unique because it's been logged 3 times, leaving primarily, believe it or not, the cedar to reemerge, and then the deciduous trees to be in abundance. And it faces due north, so it isn't, and it drains cold air from the top down through it, so it tends to have the most amazing fall color of any place in this part of Oregon. It's like a little bit of Vermont, not vermouth, Vermont. Okay.
Darn.
Oh, I'm not going there.
Well, if anyone wants to join me, I am planning on going to the Newell Creek cleanup for a couple of hours, and then before I head over to the college on April 20th. So,
Good for you.
and Rita and Brian will probably be there helping coordinate. So, yeah.
Okay.
Thanks. Anything else for a future agenda item while we're on? If there is, just let me know.
Okay.
Thank you.
Right. I'm going to declare this meeting adjourned,
Good.
and we'll see you next month.